the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour with your hosts, Joe Bond and AJ Appleton.
Touchdown! All right. Welcome to a special edition of the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. I am hosting the show solo tonight, but I do have a couple guests coming on with me. Davis and Preston White from Fantasy Six-Pack, talking some best ball recap as the playoffs are about to start over there on Underdog and over there on RTSports. And we're going to kind of recap what we've learned so far as the advance rates have been determined to get into the playoffs. Just some quick show notes, though. Make sure we hit that subscribe button, that like button, hit those 5 stars, leave those comments. We appreciate it. And we always love to hear from you. And then, guys, playoff time is here. And I know you can't do a whole lot of tinkering in your best ball leagues or none at all, but your regular redraft and your dynasty leagues still need some tinkering, and you're going to need to make those tough lineup decisions to bring home that trophy. So go ahead and join those plans, fantasysixpack.net/plans, and join us over on Discord to get access to our award-winning rankings. If you're out of it, DFS tools, projections, other DFS advice, betting advice, win back that money, those entry fees that you lost in your leagues. We're there to help you there as well. So I wasn't going to do beer of the week, but I went to the store today to kind of restock, and I saw this brew that looked different, and I was like, what the hell is that? And I think I mentioned it a couple weeks ago on the show that I had a bourbon barrel stout, and I don't like stouts, but I had a bourbon barrel stout that was really good. And then I saw this in the store. It's a Goose Island Bourbon Country brand stout. So it's a bourbon barrel aged stout. So I seem to like these, so I was going to give it a shot. It wasn't cheap, by the way. It's a pint bottle, which looks way bigger than it than a pint, but that's really all it is. They're like aged. They put like the year on it. So I'm going to give this a try and see if I like it. Hopefully I do, because it's a big beer and it's expensive. So ooh, yeah, that's good. Holy cow. I will give that a 4.5 out of 5 on Untappd. That is solid. I'm a big fan of these barrel-aged stouts. I'm not a big stout guy, but these are starting to win me over. So, all right. Without further ado, let's bring in our guest. And I just realized my camera's all blurry. Hopefully it gets better when I get smaller. There we go. Preston White and Davis Peng. How you guys doing tonight? Thanks for joining me, man.
Oh, doing well. Excited that we finally made it to this point. Get to look at all the advance rates and get some good sweats the next couple of weekends.
Absolutely.
I'm good to go. Stoked. I call this sauna Sundays now because it's sweaty as heck, and we got 3 weeks to see if any of us win big money. So.
Yeah, man. Best of luck to all you guys. Everybody that's advanced. I know we've got other guys who have advanced on Fantasy Six-Pack, but you guys are the big best ball players. You guys are in. I can't even count. I don't even know. I'm sure you'll tell me, but yes, I'm aware, Mike. My camera is fuzzy. I don't know what the hell happened. I guess I could do this whole trick, but it doesn't always work. It's supposed to, but
it's either that or I call you out on stream.
That's better.
Did it work? It looked like it kind of did, actually.
Looks good
for now.
For now, yeah, it'll go blur. I don't know. I need to get a new camera. This thing it does it almost every show now. So, anyway, I think the easiest place to start, guys, is we're past week 14. We're into the playoffs. We know what teams advanced and what teams didn't. So, can you give me your advance rates and I don't know, if you care to share, tell me what number of teams that actually is out of how many. So, Davis, we'll start with you down there.
I drafted about 760 teams. A lot of time wasted, actually, when you think about it. And then
Damn,
and that's
that's a
just in
lot.
UD. If you count RTS and drafters, probably about 800 teams this year.
Yep.
But obviously different tournaments. So I have about 262 advancing teams right now. So it's about a 34% advance rate.
34%. I mean, I'm no expert on best ball, but that sounds really solid, man.
It's about double what averages. Average is usually like 16.6. Obviously, different tournaments,
All right.
different advance rates. So I'm about double on those, and I'm about even. Well, if you count my Pomeranians, I'm about double on those two. I had about 75% advance rate on a 33% chance.
All right. Solid stuff, man. Preston, what about you?
Yeah, I'm sitting at about 26% on all the main season stuff on Underdog. Can't remember exactly how many I have total. Didn't really keep track of everything throughout the, every site and whatnot, but I think total I drafted around 400 teams. That main bunch from the main season on UD was about 200. So I have about like 50 or so advancing from that bunch, but then some others as well. But at least for those, that's what I got there.
So we have 1,100 teams between the two of us. That's like we're 1,200. That's so bad.
I drafted what did I tell you? I drafted 6 teams. I was late to the party. I unfortunately didn't start drafting till like the last week of August. And then as soon as I did, I think it was the puppy 3 closed within a day. So I got like 1 team into that one. And then so I had to wait for the puppy 4, and I mean they loaded that up like 3 days before the season started, so there was only so much you could do. So one of my puppy 4s got through, and this team, just because there's not a whole lot to talk about with me, the team is really good actually. Like I was stoked about this team. I mean, I drafted Burrow and then took my chance on Daniel Jones, and that's actually worked out. He's had some really good games. I ended up getting Chubb, Montgomery, and Miles Sanders out of it. Jefferson, Higgins, McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, not great. Had pieced together some Nico Collins and Burke Sweeks. Then my tight end was good until like midway through the season, Zach Ertz. And then Isaiah Likely kind of picked up for a couple of weeks, and then he gets hurt. So now I'm stuck with Brevin Jordan. Thankfully, I actually drafted a third tight end in this league because he came back from injury as soon as everybody else got hurt. He's doing nothing though for me, but I mean, I might advance another like round just because I'm like front loaded with like receivers and running backs, but I don't think I'm going to win any big money with this team with no tight end. I think that's going to struggle there, but yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. I don't claim to be the best ball guy that you all are, but so that being said, let's jump into some recap of strategies and what worked and what didn't this year. So thinking about what did work, let's start positive. What worked for you, Preston, as far as your strategies going into best ball this year, whether it be the prep you put in, the actual drafting styles, whatever.
Yeah, I think in general, for a lot, for everyone kind of who used the strategy, but I think zero RB worked really well just because we had a pretty interesting array of guys who were able to pretty much get going right away, who were sort of in that zero RB archetype that people, would typically draft later on, rounds 8 and on. Whereas, more often than not, you're usually waiting on the injuries to hit. And so it doesn't make the zero RB strategy as sort of useful or optimal when you're looking at like points overall, total points on the season. But in fact, it actually was so good this year that the highest scoring overall team for Best Ball Mania regular season was zero RB. So I think just with some of those guys like Miles Sanders, Ramondre Stevenson, Josh Jacobs, guys that you could all get, 7th, 8th round and beyond, the fact that they just pretty much stepped into a role day one just kind of really put a new shift on the zero RB strategy and made it even more viable than it's ever been.
Interesting. Just curious, what do you know offhand, or do you have it pulled up, like what running backs that team actually got that's leading the way?
If I had to take a guess, I'm guessing Jacobs.
Damian Pierce, I want to say Khalil
Okay.
Herbert, Rashad White, Chris Evans, and one other player. Those are the running backs he had. So his first running back was Miles Sanders around 803
Okay.
to be specific.
Yeah, I mean, I took Miles Sanders super late. I was like, you know what, guys, I'll take him. It should be a good offense. But
Funny thing
David,
about that pick,
what?
he even admits that he faded Miles Sanders like a good chunk of the season. He was just like, well, I might as well just get him here. And then he just happened to take him there. Yeah, it's like 3% exposure to it. And then it just hit, oh, it's Zamir White. That's another running back. So I think, but
Zamir White, that's worked out. Yikes. All right. So, Davis, what about you? Like, what strategies worked for you this season? Again, same thing. Could have been your draft strategy, could have been your draft prep, could have been, whatever it is that you did that worked for you.
So I hate to admit this, but my highest win rate was 0 RB in Best Ball Mania. It's an 83% advance rate based on the 6 teams I did. So it's not a huge number.
Wait, sorry. Say that again. What?
0 RB had an 83% advance rate when I went through it.
Oh, wow.
Followed by late round quarterback, late round tight end, which is standard. But Hero RB was 39%. So I did a lot more Hero RB. And it had the best rate this year. And I think it's specific to this year. I've talked about it in the past. It's like, I really like Hero RB this year. 0 is also strong. Actually, I don't know how to draft Hero RB too well from a given year to year. But our group chat at the UD Den with me, Preston, and a couple of friends really turned me on to a lot of good backup running back shots, right? The Rashad Whites, the Khalil Herberts, because people think that 0 RB is just like, oh, this is going to be easy. You just take a bunch of guys. But I think you have to see if they're going to be good. Like Kenneth Gainwell is one of those guys that we had to take a shot onto that hit and miss here and there. So I think Gain turned on to the correct 0 RBs. Ramondre was a great 0 RB pick.
Yeah, he was going pretty late. Yeah, it's tough with 0 RB. Like the way that I did it with my better teams, I had a few teams that just missed the cut. The ones that were again with you, the ones that were way off were the ones I took, a bunch of running backs early. Running backs didn't pan out this year. They weren't the high scorers. We're just seeing that time and time again. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey's awesome now, but he wasn't awesome early. He's had even some dud weeks in San Fran. So, yeah, awesome. He can get you 30 points any week, but it's been very hit or miss with him. Jonathan Taylor clearly didn't hit the way, we all expected. Even Henry's been kind of ho-hum, whatever. But my teams that were close, or that the one that did advance, yeah, I do have Nick Chubb, so that was kind of an early pick. But, I mean, I was able to get Jefferson and Chubb and T. Higgins. That seemed like a no-brainer to take Chubb where he fell to me. I wasn't planning on it. But, yeah, I took my chances on Miles Sanders. I was like, you know what? This team is good. I think
he was prized for a starter role. It makes sense.
Yeah. Montgomery was very underrated. It didn't work out all season because he got hurt, but I still think, it's you take these guys where that's the 0 RB range where I'm willing to go, is guys that are are going super late, that are at least guaranteed some sort of trustworthy workload. It's hard for me to wait until the Rashad Whites, where we don't know he's a rookie. We have no idea what's going on with him. Even Ramondre was sort of up in the air. Yeah, we all love the talent, but you never know with New England running backs, right? Harris getting injured really opened the door for Stevenson to just bust out. And then I think he kind of forced the Patriots' hand there. Now Stevenson owners are going to be in a bit of trouble now in the playoffs, but that's to be seen here. So what didn't work out well for you? And obviously we can say teams that you drafted heavy running backs, but let's go somewhere else. What didn't work for you? And Davis, we'll start with you on this one.
My robust RBs did fine, actually. Elite tight end was kind of rough.
Okay.
I feel so my advance rate of elite tight end is 33%. I drafted about 20 of these teams. Elite tight end, got a little bit different versus, let's say, so elite tight end is generally anybody in the 5th round or later, right? So like Darren Waller, George Kittle, Kyle Pitts. But here's the thing: even though it's 33% of answering, which is way more than I think most people would have expected for how much Kyle Pitts I took, because I took about 8% of him. It hurt me, but it didn't, because I also dodged other landmines there too, right? I dodged like T. Higgins, who also has been pretty useless, and so on and so forth. So I think that was my worst one, but it wasn't as bad as I thought, because I took elite tight end, it opened me up more to Josh Jacobs. Right, I had to take more Josh Jacobs. I had to take more Miles Sanders. So it kind of fell into place that it worked out. I got Kyle Pitts, but I got Josh Jacobs. So it kind of worked out.
Yeah, I stuck with the with tight ends. I kind of stuck in that middle tier, the Hawkinsons, the Ertz, the Goddards. That's where I hovered to try to take a lot of my guys, and that really was working out until a bunch of them got hurt. But that's where I wanted to go. I didn't want to pay the heavy price for Kelsey and Pitts and and those guys, even though they're awesome. Well, outside of Pitts, but I didn't want to pay that price, knowing what you had to pass on. But I was willing to go, in the middle there, because later, total crapshoot. You never know what you're getting there. At least with Ertz and Goddard, you were kind of expecting some consistency. It might not be high ceiling, but the consistency is sort of there, right? But Preston, what about you, man? What didn't work for you this year?
Yeah, I think those mid-range quarterbacks were pretty rough this year. Thankfully, I wasn't too heavy on them in the first place, but that's typically a place that I like to be. So kind of forced me to pivot anyways, but that's definitely was a rough area between, Stafford, Russ, Tom, even Carr wasn't great. So just, a lot of, wishy-washy, not so great, even ceiling weeks at all from a lot of those guys. So that living in that sort of range was pretty rough in terms of quarterbacks.
All right.
Tears for me thinking about Stafford. I had a lot of Stafford. He's my Michael Thomas this year.
Oh, I did have
Michael Thomas this year, man. Oh,
I'm
they
pretty
almost
sure I had
fine.
at
They
least-
just put cortisone in it, just dying, dude. It hurts.
I'm pretty sure I had at least one share of Stafford somewhere, or maybe two. I was in on him too. I was like, he's falling like a rock. Him and Wilson, man, they were the same territory, and I was like, man, they're gonna be good. Oh god, that didn't work at all. Man, how bad did I draft this team? Even though I drafted Jalen Hurts, that missed. Oh, because I lost Cup. All right, that'll do it. Oh, I lost Cup and Ertz. That one missed. All right. That one still got 4th place in my division. I almost moved on with that one. All right. So, you guys talk a lot about roster construction, and Davis, I'm pretty sure I saw your tweet poll go up about this. And so, what do you, after this season, do you think was a bigger reason for success? Was it roster construction? Was it the players you picked? And is that based off of what pick number you have, etc.? Or am I missing something else? What is it that led to your success the most? What's up, Dave?
Yeah,
Thanks, man.
I created that poll thinking because I know people are always swinging either direction, and I believe people leaned player picks more over construction. And I would say that it's more. I think Wyatt, one of our friends, pointed out that he goes, it's construction because construction leads you to certain players, and every year it changes. Zero RB was kind of good last year, but it's not nearly as good as this year. And it's not because of the players magically being better. It's because they were just better value. I tried really hard on Hero RB this year, and Zero fell into that place once Miles Sanders and Gibson fell to round 8 and 9. So I want to say it's construction, which led to the certain picks, right? Because you have to look at ADP, and then go, I think the value of this is higher than it normally would be because these guys are here, right? So last year, I would argue that dual quarterback mid-round was the best because you got Stafford, Tom Brady, and they had the highest points last year.
Yeah.
They sucked this year, but the year before they were straight killing it. Like the number one team was a guy that had like all Tampa and Rams. And he won by a long margin, right? Like he actually outdid this year's person by 120 points or something, right? So it was a huge, clear margin. The guy that won number one. So this year, I would say that if you went zero to hero, you got led to great value. Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, Ramondre, Khalil Herbert. It's like all these guys that normally would be round 5, round 6, round 7, round 4. Josh Jacobs, round 4, round 5 was last year, and he did pretty well, but he went 3 rounds down, 3 rounds down. So I think that's what led a lot of it.
Preston, what about you, man? Do you believe it's all like roster construction? And when I think roster construction, sorry, before you answer, when I think roster construction, I think, what we've talked about before when I've had you guys on in the preseason is, you're going, 5, or like 8, 9 receivers, like 5, 6 running backs, 2 tight ends, 2 quarterbacks, or some sort of mix of that. Like that's what I think of when I think roster construction, not kind of who you draft, like, or what position you drafted, what slot. That's not what I think of when I think roster construction. That's more of players picked, in my opinion.
So I guess I can finish that tidbit. My best roster construction was 2-6-7-3, which is 2 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 7 receivers, 3 tight end, and it was 11 of them, and it finished at a 45% advance rate. And then
probably because running back was so unpredictable this year, you just needed a bunch of them to make up for the crappiness of it.
That's
honestly.
The hero build. You're running elite quarterback and hero building, and then you're just hoping that it hits. And then my second best was the simple one I talked about on our first show: 3-5-7-3, 3 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, 7 wide receivers, 3 tight ends.
Yep, that's the one that went for me.
Yeah. I love that build. It did really well. At 57, these drafted in best ball manias with a 33% advance rate. And that means on average, they made it every 1 in 3 teams. And it came down to player picks because it's an in-between of hero. It's an in-between of 0. And it can, 0 RB. It could be anything. 3-5-7-3 is everything but elite tight end. And even elite quarterback. So you're playing a lot of the mid positions and heroes.
All right. What about you, Preston?
I think it's kind of like a floor ceiling type discussion. Like your roster construction can lead you to a pretty good overall floor. Like a lot of my top overall exposures are pretty rough, but I still had good advance rates and whatnot. So I think it's kind of like that floor that can get you there despite, having some downfalls in the individual players. But if you do hit on, some huge, 30, 35, 40% of like a Josh Jacobs, a Tua, just those type of guys, then you can just increase your overall ceiling and just hit on huge outcomes with, overall really high advance rates. But, if you're also 40% on someone like Trey Lance, then you're going to actually start seeing the balance kind of fall off, and you can't depend too much on the floor of the roster construction at that point. But, you can kind of use both as a balance, get somewhat of a floor and ceiling in there.
Yeah. I had a couple of teams with Trey Lance. I was going to bring him up, but I feel like I didn't want to cry. So we're talking a lot about Underdog, and rightfully so, because that's where a lot of the play is at. But what about like RT Sports? We are friends with them, so we got to give them, a little love here. So is anything that we've talked about? Is it different on RT? Because I know they have, obviously different scoring formats, different roster sizes. They got rid of kickers, but they still defenses, or am I flipping that? Or did they get rid
of both? Kickers.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know last year they had them, but okay. So anything different on RT as far as what you've noticed?
I want to give props to RT for having Josh Jacobs the highest ranked out of every website that I drafted on. And I remember kind of giving them a little griff about it. I was like, Josh Jacobs, round 4, in a full PPR, he's never going to hit this. And then, like, he did. Like, he kills it this year. And I'm just like, oh, crap, I'm stupid. You know, like, he did it.
We all are, man. Nobody had him there.
RT Sports did. They had him really early, actually, way more than most websites. So, like, props to them. They hit it. They hit it on the head. For me, I played a lot of wide receivers. I do think that the RT Sports draft rooms did not favor receivers a lot. There's a lot of guys run robust. Nobody was running a lot of zero. So the team that I have that's ranked 27 has, and this, you guys are gonna laugh. It has Devontae Adams. It has Justin Jefferson. It has T. Higgins. It has CD Lamb. It has Mike Williams. It has DK Metcalf. It has Garrett Wilson. Like, it has the best receiving core I think you could possibly have if T. Higgins actually plays. Right. Running backs are a hero style. It's like it's zero. It's Miles Sanders, Ramondre, Rashad White, Jamal Williams. Actually, it's very reminiscent of the guy that is number 1 in UD right now. So I played to have the upside. If you're going to give me Devontae Adams and you're going to give me Justin Jefferson round 1, round 2, I'm going to take those guys in a full PPR format. So I think that worked a ton for me. I played to the format. I played to against what the room was doing.
Yeah, I didn't do too hot on RT. Unfortunately, I hit the injury bug like fire on all of those teams that I drafted there. Unfortunately, I just got absolutely destroyed. But so be it. It happens. I mean, that's the nature of best ball. So, all right. So last thing I want to talk about before we get into kind of more specific player and guys that you actually drafted and that kind of stuff is something that Davis, you brought up. So we'll start with you to lead this discussion is looking at playoff schedule when you're drafting and I got 2 questions. So one is, when you're drafting, if there's like a tie or like it's close, do you look at the playoff schedule and go, I want this guy over this guy because they're close, but his playoff matchups should be phenomenal. So that's 1. 2 is, now that we know and we've seen this season play out and we know what the playoffs schedule is for fantasy, does that strategy change if you do that? And which matchups were we all super duper excited about that maybe aren't really going to hit now?
Right off the bat that comes to mind is like I faded a lot of the Bears situation. I mean, everyone took Cole Kmet, but I wish I had all the Justin Fields right now because Justin Fields has a great playoff schedule. And he finishes against the Lions in week 17. I mean, I can't think of a better shootout situation than like that. Justin Fields against the Lions. I would also say that I took a lot of Rams Chargers. I regret that now. I regret a lot of
Chargers might pan out for you if you got there with them because I think.
But like Stafford, Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee most likely won't, right? So like I'm probably dead.
Can't do anything about Kupp. He was hitting, but. Yeah, I look at kind of, I don't know. I look at even like the Bills to some degree. Like I feel like they're not hitting their ceiling. Maybe Josh Allen a little bit, but you had to pay super high for him. He's one that comes to mind. In some of the Chiefs guys, like outside of Pat Mahomes, and Kelsey, but Kelsey was super high price. Like they're not quite hitting even what we were kind of excited there with them. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the fact that we're talking about we like the Bears and the Lions going forward. I mean, that's weird, right?
I mean, the Lions face the Jets, which is kind of rough, but then they get Panthers in week 16, and then they get Lions Bears week 17. 15, 16, 17, that looks almost like money in the bank that I didn't take a lot of Lions. I didn't take a lot of Monroe or Jared Goff or DJ Shark. Oh my God. Right. Like
I was off of Amon. I didn't believe it. I just didn't believe last year, and
it's so definitely
with
painful.
because he did it with everybody hurt.
And then right now, even the Seahawks is one I would argue is pretty interesting, right? They get 49ers on a short week, which can be good or bad. Then they get Seahawks Chiefs, which is like a very possible shootout city. And then you get Seahawks Jets, which, obviously the Jets can be kind of smothering at times, but they also lead to like really high scoring games in like fantasy wise. So like I think that's one that's interesting. I think that people faded, right? Like people faded the Jets, but the Jets have a really good schedule coming through right now.
And the offense is starting to click. Preston, what about you, man? What what do you draft? Do you draft based off of like playoff schedule at all? Especially if it's like a tie between a player?
Yeah, kind of like how you mentioned, I use it more of like a tiebreaker for the most part, especially after this year, like what we've been talking about, how our expectations have drastically changed. I don't, I don't think we can focus too much on like specific games. At the beginning of the season or in the preseason, it's hard to focus on one specific game like that, just because we see how quickly some of these teams change for us. So many people trying to stack the Rams, the Bucks, the Broncos, and clearly that doesn't really pan out too well now. So I think you can't really focus too much on one specific game, but just using it more so as a tiebreaker and just trying to naturally stack, I think can just at least lead to some correlation. But focusing on any specific game because of a specific team that far out is, I think you're asking for a little bit too much.
Yeah, see, it's different. So obviously my focus when it comes to fantasy football is redraft and a little bit dynasty. But when it comes to redraft, right, I always tell people, and because AJ does this, AJ is heavy into this, like, oh, but their playoff schedule. I'm like, dude, week 1 hasn't even happened. We think we know what's going to happen. We don't. Like, let's be real. We really don't. I mean, we might know more than your average person because we study this game, we put in all the work and things like that. And that's what makes us be able to talk about it, educate people on it and perform fairly well compared to most. Right. And so that's why we're here as analysts trying to help out. But let's be real. I mean, nobody saw the Bears offense just after week 4 being like, oh yeah, we're okay. Like what? Nobody saw the Tampa Bay Bucks struggling hard all season long like this. Like it's been nuts. But we get it every year. But so what I tell people in redraft is, I mean, fine. If it is absolutely like a dead tie, I guess look at playoff schedule, but man, you got to get there first, right? Like I'm not bumping somebody up like 10 spots because their playoff schedule is awesome. You don't get to the playoffs. You're not winning the playoffs in redraft. But basketball's a little different because at least in redraft, I can add drop. I can make some moves. Best ball, you can't do that, right? So there is a little bit of maybe there's like, if you got to tie once or like 2 or 3 times in your draft, maybe one time you do it, 2 times you don't, or the reverse. Maybe differentiate your strategy that way with it. But it's definitely interesting to think about when it comes draft time for all that. So I want to jump into some more player specific discussions here. And this one is, the first question is going to be more position based, but you can give obviously player examples. And so we already kind of alluded to it, is remind us your initial, like your overall thoughts and your overall strategy as far as going elite quarterback or elite tight end or both. And then has that changed at all after this season? And Preston, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so for tight end, I'm definitely pro elite tight end. I think they just offer such a good positional advantage that it's hard to pass up on. And, Davis talked about it. They really just shit the fan this year, honestly. Like, they're, everyone besides Kelsey, an elite crowd, just so awful. There's nothing you can do about that. And between injuries and whatnot, there's no predicting that. I think the interesting thing going forward will more so just be, what their ADPs actually are, because it's really hard to imagine people are going to be drafting Andrews in the second round again, Pitts in the third round again. So like, are some of these guys still going to be in the elite conversation? But, just in general, I'll definitely still be pro elite tight end moving forward. As for quarterback, I'm more so not on the, I guess I don't mind elite quarterbacks, but I'm the sort of the third, fourth round price tag that Allen and Herbert and sometimes Mahomes have been getting. Like, that's not really for me in the first place. Fifth, sixth round guys, I'm totally fine with. But
Yep.
I think for the most part, you can still find some great late round ceiling performances, like with Lawrence and Fields. I think you can still piece
Tua.
together some really good upside. Tua as well. Exactly. You don't necessarily need to pay that high of a price for someone like Allen, but I still think they have a good bit of upside that, fifth, sixth round's perfectly fine by me. I'm kind of fading him in the third, fourth round range.
It's interesting you brought up next year's ADP already with the tight ends, because I remember 2 years ago after Kelsey had his monster year, and he sort of trailed off here the last couple of games, but he is still leaps and bounds above the next tight end, right? He is a huge positional advantage at that spot. And he was going middle to late first round in most like redraft leagues. I don't remember what he was going to best ball in 2021, but then he didn't pay that off. Now, he wasn't bad, but he didn't pay off that draft price. So are people going to put him back up there is my question. Is because he had this, far and away better season than every other tight end this year. Are people going to put him back up that high and just go, oh, it's worth it because of the replacement value costs and all this kind of stuff? And, I don't want to say it, but I'm going to. He's not a youngin', man. Like, this guy is going to catch up to him eventually. I mean, the guy takes a beating. He's a tight end, goes down the middle, he blocks a lot. It's going to be interesting when it finally does catch up to him. And I cannot fathom the Chiefs not trying to bolster that receiving core again, even though they have like 15 guys. They don't have the guy still, so they need to do something still. But yeah, it will be very interesting to see like the gap between a Kelsey and I guess it's Andrews, because you think Lamar comes back, maybe they'll both be healthy. I guess Andrews is still number 2. I don't even know. Like, it's not going to be Kelsey anymore. It's not going to be Waller. I mean, people are still going to throw Pitts up there, but I can't do it anymore. I'm done with him. I mean, we got this conversation going for a while, but that is the tight end debate will be very interesting going into next season to see who kind of rises to the top and how high they go. So, but Davis, so your thoughts on, what was your elite QB and elite tight end thoughts? Like, do you go after them? And has it changed after seeing 2022 play out so far?
So it definitely, I was very, very pro mid tight end last year, which was borderline elite tight end. Like I was doing a lot of Hawk Andrews when they were like 6'7", and that like carried me a ton last year. This year, I looked at Andrews' ADP and I was like, oh, round 2, like, I don't know. Round 3, I felt better, but I felt like late round 3 would have been nice. That's why I started taking a lot of Pitts, because I saw a lot of late round, fourth round Cal Pitts. That did not work in my favor. But I didn't take too much elite tight end. I think the teams that I leaned on a lot more were, I don't have any Kelsey teams, but I leaned that we don't draft them correctly. I feel like when you take Mark Andrews or Kyle Pitts, there seems to be like a huge fallout, right? We treat it like redraft. We go, oh, I only need one tight end all season, right? If I got Kyle Pitts, I don't need a second tight end. It's redraft, right? Like that's what we do. No one expects to hold on to Evan Ingram in case he busts out. There's no need to. I got Kyle Pitts. But I feel that in best ball we do it incorrectly. I feel like if you're taking Kelsey, you're taking Kyle Pitts, you're taking Mark Andrews, you need to actually value your second tight end more than other people, because you're telling us that you value the position, right? I value tight end. I value elite quarterbacks. So your second position shouldn't be Travis Kelce, Mo Alley Cox, like at the bottom. Like it shouldn't be that, because if Travis Kelce goes down, then you have Mo Alley Cox.
Your team sunk.
It's just completely done. And now I'm not saying to go Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, but like Travis Kelce Goddard would have been
maybe that's a little too much value, and because Goddard was still going in like
round 9 or 10 though.
Was it that far?
He was going.
I was thinking maybe you could have snagged like an Ingram, and maybe that's more like the value you should go at, like somebody who's not like a total, Ingram, who's not like a total bust, and was going into a pretty good situation. Has something to prove. I like that. Maybe that's the tier I would look at if I paid a high price for Kelce. Because the problem is if you go Kelce, round 2?
Yeah.
Right. Then what? You turn around in 6 rounds later, you're going Goddard. Like you lose out on some of those, because you're probably at that point you've got to make that choice. You've got to go. You've got to skip on some running backs. I think in most cases that you're skipping on running backs. So then in that like round 7, 8 range is when, even 9 is when you got guys that we've mentioned tonight. Yeah. Stevenson, Jacobs, all these guys who panned out very well. So
I agree. And Goddard's kind of an exaggeration. But my point is like you could have got Pat Fryer with round 12 or 11, right? Like, so if I go from,
I did like him. I got him at a couple of spots. Those teams just didn't work out.
That's not overspending, right? That's not obviously the rounds change up a little bit, right? If I took Kelce at 2, I have to assume he's going to survive and be amazing all season. And you're not buying injuries, but at the same time, Travis Kelce could be a very strong flex all season. Mm-hmm. He could have been a 20-point flexer all season, and you could have a 9-point tight end in the second round. So like I said, I don't think people play best ball too correctly. It's in Magic the Gathering or TCGs, we call it Voltroning, where you like stack a bunch of stuff on one thing and it's like super heavily lopsided. But then when that thing gets killed, you lost 10 assets like immediately for one thing. And I feel like Travis Kelce and elite quarterbacks are done like that. You're super invested in Mahomes when your backup is Davis Mills. So it's like, okay,
I'm not gonna lie, man. You lost me with that.
Sorry,
I'm not on the
idea that you're very top heavy. So you're extremely, extremely top heavy, and you're hoping for like the best outcome. And I don't think you're playing the format correctly. If that's the case.
I mean, it's pretty disgusting though. Like Kelce has, and this is half PPR. This is what I default to when I look at this. So half PPR, he's 90 points over Mark Andrews.
Yeah,
and that's crazy that Mark Andrews is still number 2. Granted, he had those like couple monster weeks, but like, yeah, it is pretty nuts, man. It does suck that teams that probably drafted correctly with tight end, like super correctly, took the Ertz, took Goddard, who were performing very well, are just gonna get burned because they got hurt. And like that was how to draft your team this year.
I mean, but my point to it is that I think you should not go elite and then punt. I'm not saying to go elite.
No, that makes perfect sense.
But I think like if you took Travis Kelce, you could probably have gotten away with Pat Freiermuth, and it wouldn't have hurt your draft too much, or even Evan Ingram, right?
Yeah, no, Ingram and Freiermuth, and I mean Cole Kmet
Everett,
a little too popular.
Everett,
I did have Everett in a couple spots. I liked him,
but I think Brevin.
I was even going after like Hayden Hurst, so I didn't think it was who I thought was being totally underrated.
So
Gesicki was a popular choice, but he hasn't really worked out.
Fell hard. I feel like he was not the guy for a lot of people. But anyway, so to elite quarterback, I feel it's the same way. If I'm taking Mahomes or Jalen Hurts, I kind of want Kirk Cousins on the back end because Cousins was like a round 12 guy. So and that's it. Like I would stop. I wouldn't get a third quarterback, but I would think like you kind of want to go that route so you don't lose a lot.
Kirk Cousins is going to finish as the top 12 quarterback again. He's number 11 right now.
And he was drafted at QB 14 this year.
Nobody likes him. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be weird. We're gonna reflect on this past year for a quarterback, and we're gonna see. Obviously, people started liking Hurts, but he still wasn't getting. It was like super late. I saw him go like QB6 and QB4 in a couple leagues, but like early on in draft season, he was still like QB9, 10, 8 at best. It's kind of an outlier. But outside of like, I would say the Mahomes and the Burrows and even Lamar's, right? Herbert, and he hasn't panned out, but not totally his fault. We're going to look at these names at the top, man. Justin Fields, Geno Smith, Trevor Lawrence, who was going pretty late, Daniel Jones, Jared Goff. Like, I have a feeling people are going to overreact to this and go, well, now I'm definitely just going to wait on quarterback. I mean, good luck.
If you search through Twitter for the first 6 weeks, nobody was saying that. Everybody was like crying how they didn't have Lamar, how they didn't have Patrick Mahomes, how they didn't have Josh Allen. I feel like it's always going to be kind of those interesting takes. And like I said, I think best ball is very different because you said there's no waivers. There's none of that.
Right.
And it's not about being the highest point scoring guy in the league. It's about, can I advance? And the construction is to be done correctly.
I wonder if we're going to see with quarterback a bunch of teams, especially in best ball next year, wait and grab like quarterback 20, 22, and 26 and just see if one of them pans out. Like more often than we've probably, I'm sure it's happened, right? But I wonder if we're going to see a lot of that because if you really look at it, like nobody wanted Geno Smith. Nobody wanted Daniel Jones. Nobody wanted Jared Goff.
I had an article for Daniel Jones. That was my guy coming in.
Well, kudos to you, man. But it was a tough sell, It
is
even Mariota, who wasn't, who is now benched or hurt for the rest of the year, whatever it is now. He's had some monster weeks that could have carried you a little bit. I think it'll be very interesting to reflect and just kind of see how the crowd starts shifting toward quarterbacks, whether it be redraft or best ball. That it will be very, very, very interesting to see that. But let's close out here real quick. And obviously we can't go through the whole list of your players, but just want to run through and talk about some of the most rostered players, maybe give a couple that hit, a couple that didn't, whatever. Preston.
So,
calling yourself out.
Rostered here.
Yeah, your most rostered players.
So
give your top four and see what happened.
Yeah, Cordell Patterson, Ryan Tannehill, Zach Wilson,
1 for 1.
And then
1 2.
Yeah, well, I'd say like 0.5.
Patterson's a half.
2 in that game.
Patterson's a half.
Maybe not even. I had a lot of Juju, but also had a lot of Sky Moore, so it's a double-edged sword there.
Yeah.
But I did, I didn't have as much, but very close. I had a lot of Lawrence and I had a lot of Fields, so definitely helped to balance out everything.
That's nice.
Those are most of my guys that were about 20% or over. So had some hits, but had some misses for sure. So that's why I can't complain about my overall advance rates, just because there are some duds in there, and there are some there were some that definitely panned out too.
Yeah, I was a huge Juju fan. I just I didn't think he was gonna be like a top 12 receiver, but where he was being drafted, I thought he was gonna outperform that, and yeah, we know how that goes so far. So Davis, what about you, man?
I was just going to give a shout out to Preston on that one, though, because I know when I was looking at that poll I made, a lot of people were typing, if you avoided the landmines, you did well. But Preston just listed 5 guys that particularly didn't do amazing, but he's 10% above a normal advance rate. Think about that, right? If his 5 most rostered players were all misses, he still hits 10% or more than average. And it comes down to construction, realistically, right? You could say, yeah, I missed on Cordell Patterson. Oh, yeah, but by the way, I got Miles Sanders, Ramondre Stevenson, and blah at a slightly lesser rate.
Yeah.
It's okay, one guy doesn't kill your roster. It never does. It never has. And
no, very good point.
saw a lot of comments about that, and I was like, I think if one player magically costed you your season, he must have been 17 of the same guys. Like you drafted Cal Pitts 17 times in one team.
And by the way,
Yeah.
good luck missing all the landmines. I mean, like, get real, guys. Like,
Impossible.
it ain't gonna happen. If you can do that, you should be getting paid. You should be going to Vegas betting a lot of money.
Yeah.
Go play in the $1 million NFBC leagues and just dominate. If you could do that, you're way better than anybody else I know. That ain't gonna happen. I mean, I drafted all the bus receivers in one of my leagues. Season tanked. Nothing I can do. You name the tank. You name the bad receiver this year. I had it.
I would say one in like every three players is kind of a bust, right? Like realistically, all of round 4 was a bust this year.
I mean, look at the NFL draft. Same damn way, like. So, Davis, what about you, man? Most rostered players.
Oh God, this is gonna be like pseudily embarrassing, but 48% DK Metcalf, or actually like 50% DK Metcalf.
Well, that was a good pick, man.
It's hard not to love him. I love everything.
I got a couple shares of him. You talked me into him. Especially for best ball.
I love everything about him, right? He's huge. He's in a quarterback system that would have needed him.
Sorry.
I know. He's all huge, but he also puts in a lot of work on the offseason that we can, as fans, can see, right? He's participating in the Olympic running, all this crazy stuff. Everything.
Yeah, he's athletic. He's just super athletic, man. I get it.
My next pick was Nico Collins at 36. Pat F.
That's a big
at
Collins
33. Saquon Barkley at 32. And then Brandon Ayuk at 31.
All right.
Followed by Carson Wentz at 31. But he's my round 18 guy. But he's still only 4 spike weeks, so I'll take it. I had some really good hits, but right under them I have a lot of misses. So I'm a heavy takes guy. I do a lot of sliders on my players. DK Metcalf became a meme eventually. I just kept telling my den guys, like, I'm just gonna get DK here. It's what we're doing. I'll force them, like, screw you. And then Tyler Lockett's up there too. I was really in on Seahawk value. I thought the value was just too good.
The value for them, I thought, yeah. So when you brought it up to me and actually kind of like drew attention to DK and even Lockett a little bit to me, it made me look into it a little harder. And I was like, their draft value is so insanely low. Like, you almost can't miss. They're not that bad, despite Geno Smith being their quarterback.
Or Drew Lock, even.
I mean, look, nobody expected Geno to do what he's doing. But even if he was doing 2/3 of what he's doing, the draft value paid for Lockett, especially, and even DK, you still hit it. I mean, it's just insane how far they fell. And, everybody was just like, screw the Seahawks. They suck. Like, we're out. Geno Smith, no good. I think the only worry was other quarterback who got traded from Denver,
Drew Lock.
Drew Lock. I think the only worry to me was more that Drew Lock was actually going to get the starting job. But once they gave the Geno, I was more like, all right. I mean, look, we saw Geno do some things last year. It wasn't great, but he did some things last year. And DK has some good games, even though it was like 3 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown. You'll take it. It's kind of what he's doing this year a bunch of times. But, yeah. All right. So favorite values you had this season, and did they hit? Davis, we'll start off with you, man.
Obviously, it's going to be DK. I think he was my favorite value this year. I drafted him at kind of an absurd rate, obviously. And of course he hit, I think we just talked about, he hit. And I thought everything about his situation was nice. It just reminded me of when we used to get DeAndre Hopkins for nothing on the Texans, Oh, this guy is like an all around athletic monster that gets better every year. Like, and I get him at round 6 and 7, I'll take my chances. Right. It kind of just, obviously he's not as good as like Brandon Marshall, back in the days, but it's just one of those, like, I'll just take my chances. I thought he was a great value. If I have to name somebody different, I would say Brandon Ayuk's my second choice. Brandon Ayuk was coming to a great situation. Debo was pumped up to round 2. Brandon Ayuk went to round 7, 8, 9. And at the end of the day, we saw what he did in the last 5 to 6 games for San Francisco. And you have to look at that trend and say, this could be the same thing next year at round 7 or 8. And is that bad? He was putting, I think, like borderline wide receiver 1 upside 2 numbers for the last 6 games. So if I can get that around 7, round 8, I'll definitely take that chance. So IU was definitely one of my favorites, and I'm glad he hit. Like, I'm glad he did well. He's in an upside situation. He has some issues that I think that I wish could be better, but he's been very, very relevant for fantasy this year.
Yeah. Preston, what about you? What about a couple of your favorite values this season? Hit or miss?
Yeah, I think just, it's gonna sound hindsight bias-y, but definitely just gonna have to go with like Fields and even Lawrence right now. He's really picked it up too, but I just thought they were really good later round quarterback hits, and I think it was pretty decent differentiation you get kind of with a lot of the quarterbacks moving up, a lot of the mid-range ones also failing. So I think kind of getting those guys could provide some pretty good rosters, but the overall, I think the values are really good. I'm definitely exceeded some expectations with some really good, boom weeks.
I mean,
What
amazing.
So a guy that Davis called out in the notes before a couple times talking about this show was you seem to be slightly more in favor of Tony Pollard. That's working out, huh?
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I couldn't get enough myself. I was touting him the whole time, telling Davis he should definitely draft him, but for whatever reason, it was just there were good values around him, and it was hard to be too overweight on him myself, like when push came to shove. But just on paper, it was good.
I feel like my issue, why I had 0 shares of Pollard, was because he wasn't going as a 0 RB. He was going as and he wasn't even going as like a handcuff running back. He was going as like, I rely on him running back. That's why I didn't have him. He wasn't going where a running back that was in the role that he had been given in seasons past should have been going. So obviously things worked out in favor for him, but there's that. So last thing here is players that you faded the most. This was a little harder because you can't go through your underdog list or your RT Sports list and say who didn't I draft. It's you just kind of have to know like who did you fade at their cost, and did it work out and didn't it? Whoever, I don't know. Preston, you go, man, because you finished last. Yeah,
so I actually remember this because I was just going through this. So one that I specifically remember off the top of my head was I had 1% Josh Allen. So kind of going back to that whole not pro elite QB discussion, 1% Josh Allen, and I would say he definitely did a lot better than some of the other higher end QBs, but definitely still panned out to be fine, especially with the way Fields and Lawrence picked it up towards the end. In the beginning, the first few weeks, I was like, I might be screwed. I might have taken this way too far.
All the Josh Allen managers going
once everything panned out.
But yeah, it didn't work out.
Yeah, so ultimately, it all panned out just fine.
Preston, is it because I remember you did an article last year off of something we were talking about, and Hayden Winks did this too. Is it because of the dropped games we were talking about? It's like, even though he was quarterback 1, he dropped so many games, and we did a whole article for this last year.
What do you mean?
Is that part of why we
dropped games?
Dropped games as in like didn't produce.
No, it was kind of the opposite, or that I was kind of using that more so to look at like, should you actually still take a third QB and whatnot. So it actually was nothing too specific with him in general. I think it was mainly like his ADP was just, but so like I was still doing some of that 3 QB stuff with guys like Kyler and Lamar and whatnot in the 5th round. But ultimately it was just, if Allen was in the 5th round, I definitely would have taken him.
Oh, that makes more sense. That makes sense.
All right. So Davis, we will finish off with you here and give us your most faded players.
I took my own horn a little bit, but I'm gonna kick myself in the face here. It's Amon Ra. I faded him. I was like, I don't like Jared Goff that much. I like him in best ball, but I don't like him personally.
Same way, man.
Player. And like Amon Ra had some kind of weak games, but he came at round 6 to then 5 and stuff, right? He was basically being charged around Darnell Mooney level. And then on paper, we could tell that Amon Ra had a way better opportunity than Darnell Mooney. And I kept not taking Amon Ra, and I was taking everybody around him. And it's an instant regret, like, by all means. And anybody that was on him, like, props to you. You believe that he can continue.
Yep.
So he was one of my biggest fades, and that hurts because right now looking at the schedule, like, I want all of it, right? He plays Jacksonville. He's gonna play the Bears. Like, that's probably going to be a league winner again. So that stings a lot, right? Back-to-back years, league winner.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that kind of saves you with him is that he did miss a good chunk of time.
And start a little slow, but
start off a little slow. It wasn't, it was tough sledding a little early on, but man, he's really come on. So you had to have players to be able to make up for that. I mean, I was 5 spots ahead of ECR for whatever that's worth, but I was still nowhere near, taking him where he should go. I mean, I had him behind Deontay Johnson and Gabe Davis. Gross. Like, come on. Brady Cooks is ahead of him. Allen Robinson. Oh, God.
Yeah. So, like, and that's part of the problem, right? Like, I didn't believe that he could repeat or be a 1 when he was in a 1's role. I thought he'd be like Pittman, where people think he's a 1 and he's just not going to complete it. I was wrong. He completed the 1 role really
I didn't
well.
think that he couldn't play the 1 because we saw him play the 1. It's that I didn't think he could play the 1 with Hawkinson healthy, Swift healthy, Jamal Williams healthy, DJ Shark coming in. I also thought Jameson Williams was going to play earlier than he did. I didn't think it would take till December for him to see the field. Maybe, I didn't think it would be like September, but I thought maybe late,
like October,
maybe late October, because that's what a lot of people were saying, even early November. So you had to factor all that in and think, okay, the target share won't be there, but it didn't matter. Even though he was only seeing 6 targets a game, racking up yardage, racking up touchdowns. He's just a playmaker, man. The guy's a baller. So I really do like him. Yeah, that's a good bad fade. You got a good fade, maybe?
Debo.
Go out on a high note.
I faded Debo like crazy.
Yeah.
I looked at Debo and I asked myself, how often did he do this? And the answer was once. And how many years has he been in? Quite some time, right? So I took a lot of Tyreek over him. I just didn't believe that Debo could repeat the rushing. I know he backtracked on it and said that he never said he didn't want to run the ball. But let's be real, he doesn't want to run the ball. And I think after this past Sunday, I think he doesn't want to run the ball a little bit more now, given what happened to him.
You mean when he gets hurt? No kidding.
He's hurt, and it's like, also his jack was just ridiculously hard to repeat. He had like the best efficiency stat, I think, on Yak.
He was insane. There was no way. I was 3 spots below ECR on him, and I didn't get him anywhere except 1 redraft league, and I was in like 15 redraft leagues, by the way. So I just was like, you know what? I don't have any of them. I'm going to take him in this league, but I was 3 spots below ECR, and
I think the QB change.
I had Waddle.
Like the QB change.
I had Hill over him too. I mean, so
that was my biggest fade that I think really panned out. I ranked him as a round 4 early guy with Trey Lance. Because Trey Lance throws the deep
really
ball.
low.
I mean, Trey Lance throws a deep ball way more than Jimmy G did. So I thought Ayuk would get a lot of
Ayuk. Yeah, that is an Ayuk favorable stat.
So I just thought that would be the case. Even though that Ayuk didn't start even though that Trey Lance didn't finish the season, I still think that somehow worked out, right? I just thought he was a end of the round 3, early round 4 guy, and he's not even paying that off. So
he's a hell of a player. He's just
in real life, we love him.
he's a great player. He's fun to watch. He gets the ball in his hand. He's powerful. He's talented. He can make some plays, man. Yeah, but when you rely on these guys that are yards after catch guys, it doesn't work out more often than not. And I do remember saying this about Debo before the season started, that we had to be worried about that, but like it was hard to rank him too low because the talent is there. Tyreek is one of those guys, and honestly, in seasons past, Tyreek has been very boom or bust, and he's kind of been not as bust this year as in years past. But even in his a few years with Kansas City, he was super boomer bust. It was like he's either going to catch the ball and run by everybody, or he was going to do nothing. And Debo's kind of falling into that now. He had the rushing to fall back on, but he didn't get the rushing as much this year as he got last year. And so, yeah, that's a great call there. So, all right, guys, I want to thank you for jumping on tonight and talking about some best ball right before playoff times. Good luck to both of you. Before I let you go, Preston, let us know where we can find you on Twitter and what you got going on the rest of the fantasy football season.
You can find me over at FF_engineer_, and really the rest of the year we'll be enjoying the Saturday DFS slates, going to focus on some playoff best ball stuff, kind of try to catch a break at some point and then kind of jump back into it.
Yeah, Preston is one of our big DFS guys over on our fantasy six pack. Excuse me.
.net.
Discord is what I was going to say, actually. But yes, that too. On our Discord, you and Dave, Eddie, and Mark kind of lead the charge there. Everybody else, we like to think we know what we're doing, but you guys sort of run the house there. So you guys run it. Come get the advice from him. These guys, Preston included, win lots of money on DFS. So again, join those plans. Jump in, get the advice from them, build your lineups, win back some of your money that you might have lost this year in your redraft leagues. But Preston, thank you for coming on. We will talk to you later. Davis, where can we find you and what you got going on the rest of the season, man?
You can find me at PingsPicksFF on Twitter. You can find me on the fantasy6pack.net. I write articles and we do rankings. Me and Preston split rankings on the website. I also want to say shout out to Preston for his golf peak. Actually, he does a lot of golf content for UD Best Ball, and he actually won. He took one down. He has the goat horns. So yeah, that's
Preston. We're gonna talk, man.
Yeah, so he did it. He got the goat horns. So in my regards,
I don't know what that means, and I'm pretty sure not a lot of people listening know what that means. What are the goat horns?
The goat horns is an avatar item you get if you ever finished or taken down a contest. And Preston took down a golf tournament in the off season.
Nice. So we will talk to Preston. get some golf picks in there. Get some stuff on Discord. So yeah, man, Davis, thank you again. This show was actually your idea, so thank you. This was awesome. I love jumping on here and just talking football. So thanks for coming on, and we will do it again soon. I'm sure the off season for best ball comes quick, man. You guys are going to have to pick things up. Man, it jumps right after the Super Bowl.
It does.
It is nutty. Y'all are crazy.
I'll see you later.
Before the NFL draft. But see you. Good night, man. Good luck in the playoffs. All right. So that is it for the show. I want to thank you all for listening. AJ and I will be back together tomorrow night doing our normal Week 15 show. But like I said, Davis brought up this idea, and I wanted to see it through. And with that said, I'm going to close it out. Peace.